going to leave behind the verse completely. We're not going to be talking about Moshe or mouths or speech impediments or burning bushes for a while. We're going to be talking about Kabbalistic ideas, so that once we can understand those Kabbalistic ideas in the Hasidic context as well, once we can understand these ideas according to Hasidus, we can then reintroduce them back to the topic. So what the Alter Rebbe is going to do is he's not even going to ask a question. Sometimes he asks a question on the verse and then says, in order to answer the question, we first need to understand. And sometimes he's going to just present us with the verse and then take us somewhere else. And so that's what's going to happen here. We're going to go somewhere else. And what he brings is actually something very interesting. Two very different opinions in Kabbalah about the history of the world, the age of the world. Okay? Now, there are Kabbalists who say that the world exists in cycles. Now, I know this from this Maimon, okay? It's not like I've been learning Kabbalah and know, so I hope I can explain it as much as possible. But basically, are you guys familiar with the idea of a Shemitah, of a 7-year cycle? There's an idea in Judaism of 7-year cycles. It says that for 6 years you need to work the land, and on the 7th the land needs to rest in Israel. You're not allowed to work the land. So that's coming up in a couple of years. We had it about 3 years ago, we had Shemitah. Every 7 years, in general, there's an idea of cycles of 7. Every 6 days we work, and on the 7th we rest. So there's a 7-day cycle. Then there's a 7-year cycle, that's called Shemitah. And then there's an idea of 7,000-year cycles, okay? So this is where we get into the Kabbalah. And I will just say that the Arizal has a totally different opinion, and Chabad goes according to the Arizal. So it's a much less complicated one. So the idea is that we are in a cycle now of 7,000 years. Have you had this idea? That so for 6 years you work the land, and on the 7th you rest. We discussed this for those who have been here. And then for 6,000 years we work, we're in exile, and then the 7,000th year we bring Mashiach. Okay? So there's an idea that there are 7 cycles of 7,000 years. Okay? The Kabbalists talk about this. Each one corresponding to a different sephira. There are 7 sephiras here, of emotional sephiras. And the Kabbalists say that we are in the 2nd cycle of 7,000 years. Yes?
What is sephira?
Sephira is talking about the lights of God as they express themselves, different ways that God expresses himself into the world. Different channels. And so sometimes God expresses himself in the channel of chesed, which is kindness. Sometimes in gevurah, which is severity, judgment, strictness, harshness. And as we're going to see inside, the Kabbalists say that we're in the cycle of gevurah, which is why we've had 2 temples which have been destroyed, which is why we've had a flood. We've had a lot of dramatic things happen in just 7,000 years.
Wait, so there's 7 of those thousands?
Yes.
I thought it was just 1.
Yeah, so that's because we go according to the Arizal. So don't get too stressed.
Oh, okay.
They say that there was a world, an entire world experience before this world, which lasted 7,000 years and went according to chesed, kindness. So it was a much more chill kind of world. Yes.
According to that is after the 7,000 years. Is that Shira Sekalim?
After this 7,000 years,
or
there was Shira Sekalim. Yes, and that's what we're
so
going to talk about.
after every 7,000, it happens again.
The world gets destroyed and a new world gets created. Yes, it's really stressful. I'm really glad that plays So it started with Chesed. Mashiach's coming at the end of 7,000 years.
In between Mashiach.
I don't know how it works with each one of them, again, each world, but we know that at the end of 7,000 years of this world, at the end of 6,000 years, we've been promised that Mashiach is going to come for the 7,000 year. For 6 days we work, 7th we rest, Shabbat. For 6 years we work the land, 7th we rest, Shemitah. For 6,000 years we work, for the 7,000th of the year we rest. That's Mashiach. That's according to some of the Kabbalists' opinions. Yes?
Wait, so dumb question then, why do people
No such thing
say,
as dumb question.
bring Mashiach soon, but if then you know he's coming, at
Very
this
good
time.
question, not a dumb question. The idea is that Mashiach, if we do not bring Mashiach actively, Mashiach will still come at the end of 6,000 years. But we want to bring Mashiach actively, because that Mashiach that we bring, we've actually earned. And it will be a completely different experience than if it just happens because it had to happen.
Wait, but how are we in the 2nd cycle? That would have to mean it's been 7,000 years.
Yeah, so that would mean that we're pretty much 12,000 something years into creation.
But we're not.
Or not.
Yeah.
I know, it's really confusing. That's why it's like, I was like, okay, that's one of the reasons now I remembered. I love this minor, why I usually don't teach it, because that part stresses me out. So this is an opinion of many of the Kabbalists, which basically say that this world exists within a continuum of like 50,000 years. Okay? And it's interesting because there are many scientists who will look at the world and say this world is older than 5,000 years. And there are actually opinions in Judaism to back that up. Okay? I don't know them very well, so don't ask me too many questions on it. But the idea is that there was a life, there were people who walked the earth for 7,000 years, and that they lived, they had Torah, and they related to God, but in a very different way, in a way of chesed, in a way of kindness. Now we're relating in a way of gevura. Then it will be interference, so that there's 50,000 years, right? 7,777 is 49,000 years. And then there are Kabbalists who say that there are multiple, what we call jubilees, Yovel. In the time of the Beit HaMikdash, when we had a king, we celebrated that every 7 Shemitah cycles, the year after, so the 50th year, was called a Yovel year. I think we call that a Jubilee in English, where the king would come, and the whole Jewish people would gather and would read the Torah, and it's the idea of a Jubilee. And so the Kabbalists talk about multiple Jubilees, okay, that basically we're not just existing in some sort of individual. So Hakel was celebrated in a Jubilee, yes. So that there are multiple 50,000 years, okay, that we basically exist on some sort of like gigantic continuum of, okay, it makes us feel a little bit insignificant, right? Now, the Arizal, and many other Kabbalists as well, but the Arizal who Chassidus strongly goes according to, specifically Chassidus Chabad, is like religiously goes according to the Arizal, who was a very great Kabbalist who lived in Tzfat, actually, and Rabbi Isaac Luria. If you ever go to Tzfat, you'll see there's like the Arizal Shul, the Arizal's mikveh. He was very, very influential on the Kabbalistic culture of Tzfat as we know it today. He was like the father of the Kabbalists. And his approach, which we go according to, which we'll see inside the Maimar, is that yes, there were worlds before this world. However, they were spiritual, they were not physical. The only physical world that has ever existed is this world that was created 5,785, thank you. I don't even know where we are in the
I know it because that's our code to get into our house.
Hey. That's the code to get into your house? That's brilliant. 5,785 years ago. That is when physical creation was created, and that we exist within this period of time. And that Mashiach, as well, this is already the Ramban, I'm getting confused, the Ramban's opinion, that Mashiach is also going to be physical and is going to continue physical life, okay? So there was a world of chesed, but it was a spiritual world. And it lasted 7,000 years, but not in time as we know it, because time is a creation, just like space is a creation. Just like all the physical world is a creation. So it didn't exist in time as we know it, but that there was a time, a spiritual time, where the world was run according to chesed. Now, we're going to get into this after we read it inside first, this first idea of what the Kabbalists say, but we're going to learn about Tohu and Tikkun. Yes?
According to the result, are we specifically in Gevura?
Yes.
Isn't that
It says in the Torah that Hashem saw that the world was too kind and that he needed to run it according to din, according to judgment. Yes.
Wasn't there also something after that he can't run it according to judgment?
I think it was that he couldn't run it according to chesed, no? Wasn't it the other way around?
There was, I don't know, I think there was something after
That he can't run it according to judgment and it was too harsh and he needed to do chesed. Thank you so much.
Both?
Yay.
So
yes.
you need both to have a world?
Yes. And that's what we're going to talk about, this world of integration. That we need both, but we can't have extremes. And that the previous world was a world of extremes and of extreme kindness. And God saw that worlds cannot run according to extremes, they will break. And therefore, we have to have an integrated world. And so that's the world of Tikkun, which we're going to talk about.
Right, but it's in Gevura.
It's in Gevura, yes.
Okay.
Wait, but
yes.
would that mean we're going to stop at Gevura? We're never going to get the world of Tikkun and stuff? Unless Tiferet is both, because it is, right?
So it's also it's Gvura dominated, but it's also integrated with all the Sephiros together, as we're going to talk about. That's what we're working towards when we get to Mashiach, a world of integration where we don't have just one extreme, but we have everything working together.
World is when Mashiach comes, not after Tiferet.
Right. Correct. At the end of this cycle of 7,000 years, because it's the only cycle that is physical. There is no other physical cycle, according to the Arizal and according to the opinion of the Alter Rebbe here. So what we're going to do is we're going to see that inside first, okay? And it's very confusing because like the Rebbe was very adamant that the world is 5,785 years old, and that like no older than that, okay? That we go according to this strictly when it comes to the physical sense. However, everybody agrees that there were spiritual worlds before, and this is going to be incredibly relevant because we're learning about Moshe Rabbeinu, and we're trying to understand what Moshe Rabbeinu, what was this argument with God saying, I can't speak, send somebody else, and God saying, no, I'm the one who gave man a mouth, I'm going to send you. This is going to become incredibly relevant when we talk about Moshe. There's actually a story, the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe was the son of the Alter Rebbe. So we're learning the Alter Rebbe's Chassidus. Do we have a photo of him? I don't think so.
Yeah. There's the Alter Rebbe, there's none of them.
I don't think we... So this is the Alter Rebbe. I don't think we have a Mittler Rebbe, right?
No.
We don't have a photo. This is a painting, obviously, not a photo. So we're learning the Alter Rebbe's Chassidus. We're learning a mimer from the Alter Rebbe. He was the one to establish and found Chabad Chassidus. His son took over the leadership after the Alter Rebbe passed away, and he... You see that until 1827, and he ran Chassidus very, very differently. Like he was very, very, very holy soul. Like he would speak Chassidus for 48 hours straight, and his Chassidim would just no eating, no drinking, would just come and listen and really served Hashem in a very, I guess you can call him, very, very lofty way. The Tzemach Tzedek, actually, the third Chabad Rebbe, who is the grandson of the Alter Rebbe and also the son-in-law of the Mittler Rebbe. He married his first cousin. He grew up in his grandfather's house because his mother, Dvara Leah, passed away. She actually gave her life for the Alter Rebbe. There was a decree where the Alter Rebbe was supposed to lose his life, and she gathered together 3 people in the Beit Knesset, made them swear they will do whatever she says, and they had to declare that she should die instead of her father, and she fell ill immediately, and a few days later already died. Her son was a little boy, Her son was a little boy, and she told her father, you need to raise him. So he actually grew up with his grandfather. And so he had a hard time when his grandfather passed away going to his father-in-law, his Rebbe, and his uncle, the Mittler Rebbe, to going to his gatherings because they were extreme. Like he was very organized. Like, it's like, well, we need to pray and we need to do this and this, and he didn't go to these Farbrengens. He followed very strictly his grandfather, and he's actually the one who put together the books that we have. You can see them behind you on the second shelf. You see it says Torah R right next to the black wall. There's a big red kind of book that says Nakutei Torah R. Those are the 2 volumes that we're learning one of them from here. He's the one who compiled them, his grandson, and put them together so that we actually have access to them and that they could be published. The Mittler Rebbe had a very dramatic passing, okay? He had a lot of his students and followers actually recorded the events. He got very, very, very ill and fell into a coma for quite a long time. They told him that he wasn't able to speak Chassidus because it was too straining for him, and then he fell into a coma. And then eventually the doctors came to him and whispered to him that they let him now, he can say Chassidus. He was in a coma, sat up in his bed straight away and started to speak Chassidus. It was a very, very dramatic event. This lasted, I think it was a few weeks, either a few days, possibly a few weeks, where he was just sharing Chassidus, sharing from his bed, his students all around him. And at one point, he went, and this was already towards the end, he went into what we call a dveikus, a state of what would you call this in English?
Attachment to God.
Attachment to God, but what would that look like from our perspective? A trance, maybe, like an extreme trance that he wasn't here, like he was here but wasn't here, and the Hasidim were freaking out, we're losing, he wasn't no one to talk to. They was screaming and shouting, started to panic and cry and yell, and eventually he came back and they said, "Did you hear did you hear us? Did you hear us yelling for you? And he said, yes, I heard you. What is such a lofty soul doing in such a lowly world? That's what he said. And he shared a little bit more Chassidus, and he died very shortly after that. Very dramatic story. If you look into the details, it's interesting. If anyone's familiar with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Rashbi, who's the author of the Zohar, he had a similar kind of passing where it was very dramatic, and his students were all around him and sharing different things to each one, and then right before the sun rose, passing away, all while sharing Torah. So the Mitzvah Rebbe, who was a very, very lofty soul, he said, yes, what is such a lofty soul doing in such a lowly world?
Was he talking about himself?
He was talking about himself. He was talking about himself. He was like mamish between worlds. At one point, he turned and said, I think this was the Mitzvah Rebbe, do you see the beams of the ceiling? He asked his students. He said, yes. He said, I don't. I just see the Dvar Havaya. I see the words of God that are bringing. He was like seeing the world for what it was as he was, leaving. In general, the stories of the Mitzvah Rebbe, he was a very, 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 very holy soul. And he died very young. He died quite young because his body just couldn't handle the avodah and the service of God that he was doing. It didn't match a physical. Anyway, so I always think of that when I think of this Maimon that we're going into. What is such a lofty soul doing in such a lowly world? That this is really what Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to understand. What is his role here? What we're going to learn about is where Moshe Rabbeinu actually comes from, and how he struggled to find his place in this world, and how Hashem is the one who helps him figure that out. So, with that, let's go inside, okay? Oh, I haven't given you anything. Okay, so for those who want Hebrew, I hope I made enough copies. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8, not 9. I did not. Wait, I think I made enough copies. I think I did.
We can share for the class.
Yeah. I never know how many. Okay, and then for those who want English, or who want only English, or want to follow along with the English as well, you can pass that down this way. No one wants English here. This is ChatGPT, so I'm going to keep an eye on it to make sure that that it's following the rules. But it's pretty good. I'll say that. Okay, it's really pretty good. It's definitely better than what I could have done.
Is there enough English?
Yeah, there's more English. And I can make more of anything. Does everyone have the copies they want, or should I make more copies for tomorrow?
No, there's extra.
There's extra?
There's
extra English. Any extra Hebrew? No. Does everyone who wants Hebrew have Hebrew? Yeah? Okay. Amazing. So I'm going to be reading from the Hebrew. I have the English right next to me, and it's divided into paragraphs as well. It's very exciting, because if this works, then next time I'll just put them side by side, and then I could teach whatever I want. I don't have to just limit it to the ones that are in English.
The ones that you've been printing where it's the Hebrew and the English together?
That was compiled by somebody.
They don't have all of them compiled.
No, I wish. It's an amazing website called learnchassidus.com. They have select Maimarim from the Alter Rebbe with translation. Each one takes them a very long time to put together. They have select ones and not all of them.
Do they also have from the Rebbe?
There's another website called simplychassidus.com, which has translated from the Rebbe Maimarim. Yeah.
Also another ask the what's it called? I forgot what the website. Harav.
Like the
Shulchan Aruch Harav?
Yeah, Shulchan Aruch Harav.
Yeah.
So he was my teacher, and it's not Hebrew. He doesn't have the Hebrew next to the English, but I'm sure he translates a bunch of Likutei Torah.
Really?
And they're on the website. He also has there's real books of it as well. So I'm sure you could just find the Hebrew and just match it up as well.
Okay, that's really good to know as well. Amazing. This one I really did scour the internet. I couldn't find anything with English, but here we are. I think this is going to work. I'm very excited. I don't know why I didn't think of this. I guess it hasn't been such a ChatGPT is a newer thing, right? Because I don't know, it's a struggle I've had for a long time, the English and the Hebrew. Okay, so what we're going to first do is we're going to talk about these cycles that we spoke about. These cycles of 7,000 years, that there are seven cycles of 7,000 years, and that we're in the second one, according to the opinions of some Kabbalists. Then we're going to establish the Arizal's opinion, which we follow, which is that there was a world before this world, but it was spiritual. And then we're going to talk about what that actually looked like. The previous world versus this world, the worlds of Tohu and Tikkun. Some of you might be familiar, some of you not, but we're going to do I this year haven't taught it. It could be you learned some of it with Tzipi, for those who were here at the beginning. In Mayim Rabbim, because I know it came out, but because I haven't taught it, I'm gonna go in depth, okay? We're going to make sure that we're all like on the same page with it. That we're going to do after we establish the first opinion, which we're not going to go too much in depth on because I'm not so familiar with it. Okay. Vayomer mi sam pe la'adam. Vayomer Hashem. And Hashem said a love to him, which is to Moshe. Mi sam pe la'adam. Who is the one who gave man a mouth? Then Vagomer means etc. Okay, you see the ... So the verse we know continues. We read it inside yesterday. Who is the one who made man blind and mute and deaf? It is I, Hashem. Lahavin zeh. In order to understand this, Mashe Amar Moshe, when Moshe says there in verse 10 of chapter 4, if you're looking for it, not chapter 3, Lo ish dvarim anochi, I am not a man of words, I'm not a man of speech. Ki kvad pe anochi, because I have heavy speech, right? And he said, and a heavy tongue, kvad lashon. Umashe heishiv lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then we see that Hashem responds to his claim in verse 11, Mi sam pel adam. Who is the one who gave man a mouth? Shehu kulo mukshe. Kulo mukshe means we have lots of questions on this. It's very difficult to understand. The response of Hashem is difficult to understand. The kilo yada Moshe zot betchila. Did Moshe not know this already? Mi hasam pel adam. Who was the one who gave man a mouth? It sounds like a very obvious thing to be saying. It doesn't really seem to be answering Moshe's question and helping Moshe find a solution to the fact that he's kvad peh. It's like, I'm the one who gave man a mouth. It's like, Moshe's like, yeah, I know, God, that you're the one who gave man a mouth. Why is that answering my question? So now we're going to leave this behind and understand a few Kabbalistic ideas, okay? Ha'inyan yuvan al pi hakdama. This matter can be understood by way of introduction. It's a really good translation. If anyone has the English here, the matter can be understood by way of introduction. Like it's like word for word translated pretty much. Really cool. Anyway. Tehine Isa. It is said, it is written, but Sefer Hatmuna, in a book called Hatmuna, which is one of the earliest Kabbalistic works that we have. Meyuchas l'Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana. Was written and compiled by Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, who was a very early Kabbalist. So it says there in this book called Sefer HaTmuna, Shezeh ha'olam, that this world as we know it, hu Shmita Shnia, is the second 7,000 year cycle. Ulefanea, and before this world, Hayagam ken Shmita Achas. There was already a 7,000 year cycle, the first one. Shehaita nimshechet mimidat hachesed, which was drawn down from the emotion, from the character, from the sephira of God called chesed, kindness. The Hashmita da'achshav, and the 7,000 year cycle that we're in right now, Rotzoloma, which means to say, Shit alfei shnei dahave alma v'chad charav, that there were worlds before and then they were destroyed. Hu mimidas hapachad, comes from the attribute of, what is pachad? Does anyone know? Fear, gevura, fear, judgment. And the Alter Rebbe is going to bring soon, as we see from the fact that we had a temple and it was destroyed. We had another temple and it was destroyed. We had a world and there was a flood and it was destroyed, right? This is a world of judgment. V'lakein, and therefore, darcheha, her ways, its ways, chazakim, are strong, v'kashim, and harsh, v'ra'im, and evil. Tahainu, this means to say, Shehaya ba churban bayis rishon v'sheni, that we had in this world the destruction of the first temple, the destruction of the second temple, chulei, etc. Mashe enken b'shmita harishona. This was not the case in the first 7,000 year cycle. It was not a time where things were being built and destroyed and built and destroyed. The hine tachlis. Whoa. Turn the page. Shahaita mimidas chesed. The first 7,000 year cycle was from the attribute of kindness. Haisa ha'avoda ba'ofen acher. The way that we served God and the way that God related to the world was in a completely different way. V'gam ha-Torah haya ba'ayfen acher. The Torah was in a different way. We know that Torah is very much according to judgment. If you do this, you will get this. If you don't do this, you will not get this. It's a Torah that uses judgment. Yu'uyan Sham, as can be elaborated there. So if you want to go to the Sefer HaTmurah and understand more about these, if you want to break your head open and understand that we live in this one 7,000 year cycle out of 7, which actually exists, so that's 50,000 years, but there are multiple 50,000 years. If you want to get into that, you can go and look there. V'hayurak tov v'chesed. There in the previous world, there was only goodness and kindness. Kach das Sefer HaTmuna. This, what we just read, is the opinion of the book called Sefer HaTmuna and of many of the Kabbalists. V'yacharav, but after this book and after Reb Nechunya ben, what did we call him? Hakana, right? Nechunya ben Hakana. We had many other Kabbalists. V'yacharav nimshechu ha'mekubalim ha'acharayim. After him there came many later Kabbalists, ladun mizeh, to establish from this, shemuchrach liyais, that there has to be od chamesh shmitais, another 7,000 year cycles, achar shmitazu, after this 7,000 year cycle, after this world. Ki tzarech liyais zayin shmitais, because there need to be 7,000 year cycles, keneged zayin midas alyanos, corresponding to the 7 emotional attributes that we have spiritually on high, which you can see here of chesed, gevurah, tiferes, netzach, hod, yesod, malchus, kindness, severity, beauty, or mercy. Netzach means victory, hod, humility, or there's another few words for hod, that's what's coming to mind. Yesod, connection, and malchus, kingship. So there are the Kabbalists that came after him who elaborated on the Sefer HaTmuna by saying that there need to be another 7,000 year cycles corresponding to each one of the Sephiros. Aval. However, there's good news. There's another opinion. Baruch Hashem. I really don't know what I would actually do with my brain if we didn't have this other opinion. So there was people living, and that's the opinion, that there were people, and we have their names. We're going to learn about some of them. People who lived in the previous 7,000 year cycle in a completely different world. A world completely different than what we know. And that there will be people who will live. It's mind-boggling. It's just, I don't know. For the way I'm simple.
But it is true?
According to some opinions, it is true. According to the Arizal, who Chabad Hasidus goes according to, it is true, but only spiritually, as we're going to see. There were worlds.
It makes more logical sense. I don't hear.
Yes, it does make much more logical sense.
I don't see the logic behind it.
Well, there are proofs. We'll see. There are proofs that say.
Proofs?
So it says about Chanaich, for example, from the Torah. We don't have any. Of course, we don't have physical proofs. Kabbalah, you should know. You cannot go to a Kabbalist and say, "Show me physical proof." Kabbalah proves itself through Torah. There are 2 ways you can know about God: by looking at the world, or by looking into the Torah. The philosophers look at the world and learn about God, and the Kabbalists look at the Torah and learn about God. So if you say to a Kabbalist, "Give me physical proof," he's going to point to you a verse in the Torah. That's the most he can do, right?
What was the name of who wrote the Sefer HaTmuna?
Thank you, Ben Hakana. Nechunya ben Hakana. I know that it's one of the earliest Kabbalistic works that we have.
Where does it say?
Where does it say it? In the footnote on page 17, 204. And it even says where it is. Tuf Kuf Mem Dalet.
What's the English here of it?
I have no idea. I can check online for you. I just have a block, so I can't even pull it up right now. But it says here also, Ra'eitu Kinei Zayar, Tikunai Tikun Mem Aleph. It also says it in the Zayar. I know that also the Rabbeinu Bechaya has this opinion as well. He was a big Kabbalist. So it's also brought in the Zohar, and it's also brought somewhere else that now I don't remember. But it's an idea that's brought all over Kabbalah, this idea that
they also believe that they could bring Mashiach in one of the previous worlds, previous cycles, or they're not until the last one?
Oh, that you saying that Mashiach is going to come at the end of 7,000 years? Yes.
They believe that.
But there's opinions that say Mashiach's going to come because there's within the 7,000 years, there's 6,000 years of work and 7,000 years of rest.
So
and
every time
1,000
Mashiach
years
is gonna come?
Visiting?
that Mashiach will last for 1,000 years.
And
And then
And then we're going to start again.
No.
Have you heard this opinion? Yeah.
No.
That's cool.
It's cool.
Somehow
that
makes me
doesn't
feel
bother me.
relaxed. I don't know why. Like feeling so insignificant makes me feel really relaxed.
Yeah, that's why Chabad doesn't want you to feel relaxed. They want to tell you
Relaxed,
that
but
it's
less-
just this
maybe
world.
less
Wait,
anxious. I
why
don't
does it
know.
make you feel relaxed? I think
Less
opposite.
anxious, I would say. I don't know why.
Why?
I just feel less anxious when I think about
You
that.
work so hard for something and then it just leaves after 1,000. I don't know.
But it's not gonna be me by the end of 1,000 years, as I am now. So
It makes you feel insignificant,
Not
and that
ins-
could be calm. Like that could be
yeah,
like,
that could be common.
yeah, like okay,
I don't know if
doesn't
it's
really
com-
matter. Like,
I don't. I
you can
wouldn't
chill
say
now.
doesn't mean that I'm less responsible. But I don't know why. I don't know why. I need to look into that.
I understand why. Like I think nihilism, which is kind of like this like idea of like nothing that I do matters. I think that's called
So
nihilism,
then you
right?
all work for it.
It's the idea of like
Put in the effort.
I exist in I'm such a tiny speck in this whole cosmic universe that nothing that I do matters. But nihilism is like, on the one hand, you could say that's reassuring, but it's also a very scary place to be, right? Because it's like if I'm just a speck, like where.
You're nothing.
But compared to that, all my problems are not such big problems anymore. So that's what I mean.
I hear that.
Yeah.
I hear that. Yeah.
Like, it makes you
Yeah.
meet every challenge you encounter in your life. Like kind of, okay, that's a challenge, but in the end of 7,000 years anyway, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be fine. I'm gonna go through it.
There's a book I read called 4,000 Weeks, which is like the idea is that the average human lifespan has 4,000 weeks in it, which is nothing.
Oh,
4,000 weeks.
What?
Yeah, I know. So that's why it's called 4,000 weeks.
that's true.
So that's like okay, but actually he has a whole chapter where he speaks about that. Like,
So 4,000 Shabbos.
Wow, oh, that's cool.
wow, I didn't think about that. An average of 4,000 Shabbos.
Whoa.
And actually, the 4,000 was being generous. That's like someone who lives into their 80s.
No, I think there's like 53 weeks in a year, so it would be like 75. I think we could live more than that.
More than 4,000 weeks.
No,
That's
sure.
Pardon?
Yeah. Maybe we could push
think
to
it's more?
5,000.
So it's the average.
It's an average.
Yeah,
It's an
that's
average.
the average.
Let's say
lifespan.
5,000. Let's say 5,000. 5,000 Shabbos. That's not a lot.
Right.
That's like you can sit and count to 5,000. Like if you're really
appreciate every Shabbos.
right. That's an interesting one. I didn't think about that. That there's that many Shabbases. But he has a whole chapter that where he speaks about that of like, stop being so hard on yourself. You're in the scheme of things. You're pretty insignificant. And for me, when I read that, I was like, that sounds nice. But also, I know that like the Rebbe would never say that, right? Like the Rebbe's opinion, which was staunchly, and Chabad Chassidus in general, which was staunchly according to the Arizal, says that this is it when it comes to physical life. Okay, there were spiritual worlds that transcend time, which means that they actually still exist now, and we'll talk about that and how that actually is relevant for us. But the physical world as we know it, this is it. We're it.
According to the other opinions, I don't know if you would know this because I know it's a little bit out of the box, but what's the, like, after the final one? I guess you said there's also, like, the yoga one.
There's
but, like,
multiple.
it
says that there's
opinions, or at the same, they all agree that if it's all...
From what I understand, when I looked into it, it was just like, yeah, and there's multiple 50,000 year...
No.
So just
Yeah.
Is there ever an
I don't
end?
get like the point.
It's
of
like
that.
if you think...
Is there ever an end?
Yeah.
For
So-
God, it's probably
So
never
let's
an
think
end.
about, okay, so
Like for us, it's
when
never
we
an
think
end.
about the Arizal's not coming along and saying, we'll read the Arizal's opinion now. He's not coming along and saying that that's incorrect. He agrees with that opinion,
No, but it's
but spiritually. Now, we know this already. I mean, if you even just think about the globe versus I'm another area that I don't know at all, but all the constellations and all the different, what's it called? The universe.
Yeah.
Our
That's what it is.
Earth compared to the universe. This is physical. What is it? It's insignificant pretty much. Like the way that I've heard some people describe it is like that there are pockets of like
In the universe.
pockets within the universe, and each one has infinitely more space and stars and things than our world, and that there are multiple of those.
The black hole. Oh wait, no.
It's like
the universes. You're saying?
Yeah, that there are like multiple universes,
Yeah,
right? So it's like that's kind of what that we live within 7,000 years, within 50,000 years, but there's multiple 50,000 years, right? So when we think about this spiritually, well, when it comes to God, He's infinite, right? So there are infinite sort of spiritual realities.
Timelines, like how like there's like an opinion, like every decision you make, like let's say okay, right now you just chose to drink a cup of water, and another timeline you didn't choose to drink the cup of water, so then the possibilities of your choices like they all exist in
for some reason I'm not understanding this.
Okay.
Like a multiverse.
Yeah, let's say a bigger decision. So I decide to go out for Shabbat, or I decide to stay in for Shabbat.
Decisions.
Bigger than drinking water. I mean, then one timeline is the timeline where you chose to go out for Shabbat, and the other timeline is the timeline.
But you never chose not to go out for Shabbat.
But it exists.
The possibility for you not to do that exists.
No, but
I think I can give a better example than you give. For example, I went to Shabbat and I met my husband. If I didn't go to Shabbat, I wouldn't meet him. And I in this time I'm getting married and this and that. In another timeline that exists in the same universe,
but it doesn't exist because you didn't do it.
Oh, it exists.
But
the possibility.
In another universe, I didn't go out.
What other universe?
Right. No, it's like that. There's multiple. So the idea, the concept is above you. It's transcendent. Then there's equal universe.
It's like train tracks,
We all that we feel.
That's the idea of time.
We just only know our universe.
Should we do Kabbalah? No?
There's
Does this have Jewish sources, or is this something that
no,
you read
no. I don't know if it
No, it's just I think it's an interesting concept, but it kind of is. I think this is probably where everything is sourced in Torah. So this is probably where
is everything sourced in Torah?
Yeah, no, everything is sourced in Torah. I'm sure people. I'm saying it's not necessarily.
Listen, maybe Harry Potter we can source to Torah.
No,
but not
it
everything.
doesn't mean it's true, but I'm sure people got the idea from something like this.
like time travel,
yeah, it all comes from,
Okay.
Right.
Well, our soul exists beyond our physical reality, and therefore, yes, there are multiple things, lives our soul could have lived, and so maybe that could fit with it. I'm just not understanding how that's an alternate universe if it never happened because you never chose it.
Because the idea is that you create the universes are created by when you make a decision. The opposite decision is
made
created.
somewhere.
It exists, but not right here.
Okay.
In a different timeline.
Okay, that can make your head really messed up if you think about it. Okay.
Don't think about
I'm not gonna. There's too many. I'm not.
But I have a question. Is there any Jewish sources that say that we're not the only people alive right now?
Or creatures. Like humans?
People, yeah.
It's a really good question. Someone actually asked me that. One of my husband's students asked that at the Shabbos table.
If there's another universe.
That if there are other physical people living right now. So the only closest thing we have to that is the Kabbalists who say that there were people who lived in a different time period, that there was a world that existed and then that was destroyed. Now, in terms of physically, we believe in the Torah, and nowhere in the Torah does it say that there are people here and that also there's some other planet where God also chose his chosen people over there. We don't have a source for that.
What about the creature?
Wait, how could a spiritual world be destroyed? It's
we're going to talk about that. What does that mean that the spiritual world gets destroyed? Very, very good question, because it's not a physical thing. Yeah. We're going to talk about that when we talk about the breaking of the vessels and we talk about the two different worlds.
What about creatures?
What do you mean by creatures?
Other forms of life?
So there are no...
the Shindalins.
Okay. Are they physical?
I thought so.
According to the Bible, yeah.
I think they're kind of in the middle.
They're the Baal Shem Tov.
Right. But where did
in the spiritual world?
In the spiritual worlds, right? But then they would come into the physical world sometimes and express themselves physically. But in this physical world, there is no other physical world going on right now.
But they exist.
There are multiple other worlds going on right now, but they're all spiritual.
Yeah.
Now that means, but they overlap with us. That's where it gets interesting.
It trickles down to our world.
Yes, like there are angels that exist in multiple different spiritual worlds, and they're also here right now. We just can't see them or relate to them.
Yeah.
But they're here. Okay? And we're going to talk about that.
It's
How
not
does
like
the world of
4
Tohu,
separate worlds.
the previous
They're
world
all-
of Tohu was destroyed, but it also transcends time because it was a spiritual world which didn't have time, which means that there's concept of Tohu, of that first cycle that exists here as well now, and that we have experiences of that. We're going to talk about that. So that is where it gets confusing, but also less confusing because we're not talking about physical things. We're talking about spiritual, infinite spiritual possibilities that exist, that have existed before our world, that will exist after our world, and that because when we talk about before and after, the concept of before and after is a creation. Time, this is also a debate among Jewish thought leaders, but the way that Chassidus agrees, time is a creation. God created the concept of time when he created this world. So when we say, oh, the world's before this world, the world's after this world, 7,000 years before, 7,000 years after, these are just as we can construct them in our mind, which needs to rely on this concept of time. But time doesn't actually exist in those worlds. Okay, so we're going to talk about what do we mean then that the world was destroyed? What does that mean? We will talk about that. You ready to learn the Arizal's opinion, which is a bit more grounding? Okay.
Do you want an English copy?
Oh, hello. Do you want to follow along with the English? We don't have another Hebrew, but I'll make you one for tomorrow. Okay. Or you can sit next to someone. Sit right here and we'll read it. Okay. It's good? Okay. Okay, so Aval, we're on page 18, first paragraph, last sentence. Aval, however, Ha'arizal, the Arizal, which stands for Reb Isaac. His name was Yitzchak Luria, right? So what's the Reish? Rabbeinu Zichrona Levracha. Okay. Palig al zeh. Palig means he disagrees. He disagrees with this opinion that there were physical worlds before this world and that there will be physical worlds after this world. From what they said that after this world there will be another 5 cycles. Okay, you'll see he does agree that there was a cycle before this cycle. So also when it comes to the idea that this physical world is the second 7,000 year cycle, he also disagrees with this. This he agrees with, but we'll see that he only agrees with it spiritually. The Torah, what's the first word in the Torah? Bereshit, in the beginning. Beis is the second letter of the Aleph Beis. It should have started with an Aleph. Why does it start with a Beis? Because there was a world that existed before this world. But according to the Arizal, it was a spiritual world. And we're going to learn about this. Lomar, which is to say, Shekvar hayta shmita achas, that there already was a cycle, a 7,000 year cycle, v'achshav hi shmita shnia. Now we are in the second cycle. However, there aren't going to be 5 more cycles after us. This is it. When Mashiach comes, it's eternal, and this is it according to the Arizal. Aval perish Arizal. But the Arizal explains the fact that we're in the second 7,000 year cycle by saying, and we'll finish with this for today, De'ein hakavana lomar, that the intention is not to say, Shehaya olam gashmi, that there was before a physical world, kmo olam haza, like this world, da'achshav that we have now, im shamayim va'aretz, gashmim, with a physical heaven and earth, and domim, tzomeh, chaim, adaber, I wonder how ChatGPT translated this. I'm so curious. Hinted at the Torah's opening with the letter Beit, signifying that there was already one Shemitah. However, according to the Rizal, it was not a physical world. Oh my gosh, it got it. It understood that. Woo, it's so smart. Vegetation, animals, and mankind, which is Domem, Tzomeh, Chai, Medaber. And it just puts Dalet Samech Chai Mem, which is an acronym for Domem, Tzomeh, Chai, Medaber. And ChatGPT got it.
Because it's scanning all of Google,
It's
everything.
crazy though. That's
Because there must be translations in other sources.
There are.
Yeah.
There's actually a website that has just
The
abbreviation, so I guess it
Right.
has access
Only
to
thing
that.
is, it's interesting that it says like Earth for the first
But also with many
Domain.
abbreviations,
Domain means inanimate objects like Earth.
but with many abbreviations, there's two translations.
He looks like context probably.
I guess it looks like context. Oh my god! And this spit it out in a minute. Not like
Yeah,
it did its
seconds,
research.
yeah.
Seconds.
Yeah.
It's crazy. What is this world? You see, this world is much crazier than we even realize. So maybe we do have alternate universes, and I should just embrace it. Okay. I'm surprised that it got that. So, earth, vegetation, animals, and mankind. That's domen, inanimate objects. So, me'ach, vegetation, chai, animals, medaber, people who speak. People, humankind. Ki ze lo haya rak b'shmita zu dafka levad. He does not agree that it was not necessarily only in this world. He disagrees with the fact that you could say that there was humankind and animals and vegetation and physical realities in the previous Shemitah. So what about this cycle that existed before our world? The fact that the Torah starts with Bereshis, with a base, there was a previous world. Hu inyan olam hatohu. This is referring to the world that we call Tohu. And that we're going to talk about tomorrow. Okay? What is the world of Tohu? And this is a spiritual world, not a physical world. According to what we're learning and according to the Arizal, again, according to some opinions, it was a physical world. But we're leaving that behind now because that we don't agree with. What was Olam HaTohu? What is this world? How was Olam HaTohu destroyed? What does that mean? What does that look like? That we're going to... tomorrow is Thursday. We're going to talk about it on Sunday, so I'm going to leave you in suspense for the whole weekend.